Uber Technologies Inc. and Tesla Incorporated are planning an unlikely joint invasion of the land of the rising sun. Uber has just announced plans to deploy Teslas to enter Japan's taxi market following a legal change allowing ride-sharing in certain places at certain times for the first time ever. This partnership may surprise people who closely follow both companies, since Uber announced plans in 2021 to create its own EVs starting in 2025 and already has self-driving taxis, which are also electric, in 3 U.S. cities. Not to mention, Tesla announced plans this year to start producing a fleet of Robotaxis in 2024 that would compete directly with Uber. So why are the two companies cooperating out of the blue when they should be rivals? And is this partnership in Japan a signal that Uber and Tesla will cooperate more in the future? Let's dive right in and find out. Hello and welcome back to PSD Markets. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's video. Currently, ride-sharing is illegal in Japan. The Uber app in the country can only call a taxi, not offering ride-sharing. The company never got the necessary permission to operate in Japan due to strong pressure from the taxi industry, which claimed that the introduction of ride-sharing would create unfair competition due to its lower prices. The National Federation of Automobile Transport Workers is a strong union representing about 40% of Japanese taxi drivers. So initially, the government gave into this union to avoid a strike and maintain political support. Despite this opposition, a severe shortage of taxi drivers caused the Japanese government to begin introducing ride-sharing in parts of the country this April. Japan's rapidly aging population has caused the number of taxi drivers to fall by 20% since 2019. On top of this, Japan's tourism sector is booming now that the country reopened to tourists in October 2022 following the pandemic. The number of tourists reached 2,561,500 in October of this year, exceeding pre-pandemic levels. So Japan is quickly facing a situation where there are not enough taxis to meet demand, creating the perfect opportunity for Uber. Now, Uber has the chance to bring their ride-sharing model to Japan, but why are they using Tesla EVs to do it? Well, Uber has a plan to invest $800 million worldwide to support the shift to EVs. The goal is to become fully electric in the US and Canada by 2030 and globally by 2040. Uber's decision is not because it is environmentally conscientious, but because of Canadian legislation setting the goal of selling only EVs by 2035 and US legislation to subsidize EVs. As for Japan, it also plans to convert to EVs by 2035 fully. In addition, Uber has been facing pressure due to its role as a polluter. It's estimated that in 2022, each mile traveled by a person in Uber caused an average of 147 grams of CO2 in Europe and 322 grams of CO2 in the US and Canada. In response, Uber unveiled its plan to completely transition to electrical vehicles worldwide by 2040. This is made even more strange by the fact that Uber EV fares will be 20% more expensive than regular taxi fares in Japan, which should somewhat reassure Japanese taxi drivers. Not only does Uber plan to transition to using only EVs, but it also plans to have its own EV and maybe even a self-driving one. Uber has partnered up with Arrival SA, an EV maker, to develop its own custom cars. The two companies plan to transition in London to EVs by 2025. This will be the first phase in Uber's plan. In addition to this, Uber has also partnered with companies that develop autonomous vehicles, commonly known as AVs, which have already been made available through the Uber app in Phoenix, San Francisco, and Austin. The AV makers that Uber has partnered with are Google's self-driving car division, Waymo, and a startup called Motional. Motional is a joint venture between Hyundai Motor Co. and mobility technology company Aptiv plc. For Uber, it makes sense to eliminate its drivers since they represent the highest cost to the company. Therefore, AVs are a logical next step. The fact that Uber is now providing AVs, albeit in limited places, and plans to have its own EVs puts it at direct loggerheads with Tesla, which has 50% of the market share of EVs and plans to have its own AVs, and in fact, Tesla plans to directly compete with Uber by launching its own Robotaxi. Tesla CEO Elon Musk has said that he's targeting production for the Robotaxi to start in 2024. However, the Robotaxi doesn't have to be a brand new car. It could just be an existing model, but with the company's self-driving software installed. Musk also discussed the possibility that instead of people's cars being parked when they didn't need them, they could have self-driving software installed and be a part of a ride-hailing network. This would benefit both car owners and Tesla, who would split the profits. Musk has indicated that Tesla would adopt a platform for ride-hailing AVs that would be limited to Teslas only, which would exclude Uber. However, if this competition does kick off, Uber would probably have the upper hand since they already have a user base. Why would someone with an Uber app already on their phone download the Tesla app as well? In light of this competition between Tesla and Uber in the arena of EVs, AVs, and offering ride-hailing, it seems very strange that the two companies have apparently decided to put their rivalry aside aside and cooperate in Japan. It could be because Uber saw the change in Japanese law as an opportunity to get into the market, but lacks the EVs right now to do it, so they had to buy them from Tesla. However, this doesn't explain why the two companies partnered before. Recently, Tesla has started selling its EVs to Uber drivers directly through Uber. Tesla has even offered discounts for Uber drivers on their Model 3 and Model Y vehicles. How can we explain this unexpected alliance? Well, it could be the case that Uber hasn't been able to supply the number of EVs promised in their transition plan, so they've turned to Tesla. It can also be the case that Tesla wants to get into the ride-hailing market, test the performance of its cars in this role, and gain market visibility. Therefore, it's probably a strategic alliance based on overlapping interests. This alliance exists in tandem with the rivalry, however, as both companies continue to work on their own offerings. Back to the Japan deal, how could it be beneficial for Uber? Well, the entry into the Japanese market is significant since total revenue was projected to reach $2.56 billion this year and is expected to rise to $2.69 billion by 2028. The number of users is also projected to increase to 14.28 million users in 2028. In addition, the purchase of Tesla EVs is bound to move Uber to its targets as defined by its transition plan. As for Tesla, it will benefit from the deal by getting market visibility as well as testing its vehicles in the ride-hailing market. The deal can also benefit Tesla's branding as a leader in sustainable transportation. In addition, Tesla will benefit from the revenue it receives, as it plans to provide Uber with 30 Tesla Model Ys initially, which will then increase to 100 during 2024. What does Uber's entry into Japan mean for Uber stock? Well, it would be assumed that the deal would have a positive effect on Uber stock since the deal would add more customers to the Uber platform. However, Uber stock wasn't affected by the news according to the chart. This might mean that investors don't think that the news is relevant to Uber stock. Perhaps investors are waiting to see whether Uber will capture a large segment of the market, something that is made difficult by the fact that Uber EVs would have a more expensive fare than regular taxis. If we take a closer look at the Uber stock chart, we find that Uber stock has been in an uptrend since October and is nearing its all-time high. The RSI also shows that the stock is overbought, and these two factors might suggest that there will be a pullback soon. The uptrend could continue after the pullback. To sum up, it looks like the two companies are cooperating and competing simultaneously. They both had plans to encroach into each other's territories, but were presented with a golden opportunity in Japan that forced them to become allies. This dual relationship is likely to persist as the world transitions to EVs and the business models and offerings of both companies become well-defined and take root. Whatever happens, this will be a very interesting relationship to keep an eye on in the coming years. Well, that's all for now. And if you haven't, please subscribe and leave a like for this video. Your support helps us continue our work. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.